Way back in 2014, when we all looked younger and we had thicker hair, Sony released the then new 70-200 f4. And over the last 9 years, it became immensely popular for a variety of reasons. It's a small, compact, travel-friendly zoom lens that gets you close to the action, and it was a good performer. Now, here we are in 2023, and Sony has finally released the update. And this one is a little different. The name on it is 70-200 Macro G OSS 2. Let's check it out. This is it. And in the last 9 years, Sony has managed to shrink this lens by an incredible 15% and reduce its weight by a whopping 15%. All jokes aside, it is really 15% shorter and 15% lighter. And according to Sony, it could have been even smaller still, but they decided to keep it longer so that it would be compatible with teleconverters, which I'll bring up here shortly. This new 70-200 is unlike the old one, which did all of its zooming internally. If you zoom with this one, it gets about 3 inches longer. Now, this may or may not be a big deal for you. Certainly if you're running around with this lens on a gimbal and you're having to rebalance every time you zoom, that becomes an issue, but it's still relatively lightweight at 794 grams. Anyway, let's start with a tour around this Macro G. Starting at the bottom, there is a metal mount with electronic connections. There is a rubber gasket here for weather sealing, and in fact, this entire lens is dust and moisture resistant, meaning all of the seams are sealed. The buttons and switches have silicone rubber gaskets, but it's not 100% dust and moisture proof. Optical steady shot is here, and this is important because as great as stabilized camera bodies are, when you use them with a lens that is also stabilized, the results are always better. There is a tripod mount here that is removable, moving up to the lens specs finished in some silver letters. And then there are switches, a lot of switches. Autofocus to manual focus switch, full-time DMF or direct manual focus on and off switch, a focus limiter switch, optical stabilization on and off switch, and a 1-2-3 mode switch. So all of this means there's a lot to play around with and customize on this lens. Next up is the zoom ring, which is nice and smooth, quickly rotating from 70-200 millimeters. It has good resistance with no slop, no backplay. It's done very well. On the right side, there is a little switch to lock it in place when traveling. Further forward, there are 3 customizable focus hold buttons, a G logo, Sony logo on this side, and that's it. Then the focus ring is right near the front. It is electronic, so it rotates freely with minimal resistance in either direction. There are some specs here on the bottom, 72mm filter thread, and some minimum focus distances. Around the front, there is a nice front lens element. No writing around here, it's a clean design, and if you shake the lens, you can see the OSS in action, moving little elements inside. In fact, there are 19 elements in 13 groups. A bunch of those are designed to suppress and minimize aberrations, and it has a 9-bladed circular diaphragm. While on the topic of what's inside, the autofocusing system has been completely redone. This lens has 4XD or extreme dynamic linear mode, which is the same as what you get on the new 70-200 f2.8 Mark II. The result is this new lens is about 20% faster at focusing, it's smooth, silent, and even works with the new Alpha 1's blackout-free 30 FPS continuous shooting. Now, I don't have an Alpha 1, but I do have this, one of the cheapest new full-frame Sony cameras that you can buy, the A7C. And mounted on this camera, the lens looks great. It's not too heavy, it is comfortable, it looks great with that space white textured finish, and with the lens hood attached, it makes me feel like I could be a viable member of the paparazzi. So up until this point, it is simply a 70-200 millimeter lens, that's f4, but what makes this thing special is the macro capabilities. In fact, it is a 0.5x magnification all throughout the entire zoom range, which is incredible. And we talked about the size being only 15% smaller. The reason again is because Sony made this lens compatible with their 1.4x and their 2x teleconverter, which means with the 2x teleconverter, if you put that on this lens, you get a 1-to-1 magnification throughout the entire zoom range, which is incredible. Now, let's take a look at how this thing performs on my A7C. All of these are straight out of the camera, unedited, ready, set, go. so this is a very capable and well-performing zoom lens, and that macro capability makes it a whole lot more interesting to use out in the real world because it's effectively two lenses in one. If you are a nature photographer, a travel photographer, someone who photographs food or insects or close-up B-roll shots of anything, this lens is a stellar little option. It's sharp wide open. The center of the frame, in the corners, it's a refined lens. I've never handled the old one, but from everything I've read about it, there was one big complaint, that it wasn't sharp enough wide open. This new one is. The colors and the contrast are excellent, details are preserved, distortion appears to be well controlled or at least not noticeable with in-camera corrections turned on. I found chromatic aberration performance to be excellent, very, very good. In fact, flaring is also nicely controlled, especially with that deep lens hood attached. The bokeh is pleasant, it's smooth, not distracting, circular. The autofocus is so good. It's silent, it's fast, it's accurate, it's reliable. It's everything that you want in an autofocusing lens. And I have to mention that OSS or optical steady shot because it's extremely challenging to get steady handheld footage at 200 millimeters, but here you are, thanks to that OSS working with my A7C. I'm impressed by how steady you can get handheld video with this combo. But by far the thing that I like most is that macro capability. It opens up this lens to do so much more than just a standard portrait style telephoto image. You can capture insects, small details in everyday life, and just as easily capture a person immediately after. I can see this being especially useful if you are a wedding photographer or videographer. With this lens, not only do you get that classic versatile field of view, but now the ability to do close-up macro shots of flowers, rings, etc. And because of that, if you are in the market for a 70 to 200 and you're looking at the $2,800 brand new f2.8 Mark II and you're looking at this lens, which is also a macro and probably over $1,000 less, it is a tough choice. I don't have official pricing on this lens, but I think the range is $1,600 to $1,900. So if you guys are interested, check out the link in the description for an actual price. But it's still going to be significantly cheaper than that f2.8 Mark II. I'd say if you are shooting outdoors most of the time, the f4 will be more than enough on a full frame camera. So saving the money and gaining the functionality makes a lot of sense, especially when you factor in buying the 70 to 200 f2.8 and the Sony 90mm macro, for example, would be just about $4,000. This lens, therefore, could be a bargain to the right person. So I personally like this lens. I think it's a good release, and I'm just guessing, but I think that it will be a very good seller for Sony into the future. But let me know, what are your thoughts about this new lens? Leave those down below. If you are curious to read more specs about it and to pre-order it or buy it, use that link in the description that I mentioned earlier. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for all of your comments, all of your likes, and your support. Stay tuned for more, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.